The clink of the wine glass as it settled on the white linen tablecloth sounded like a muffled gunshot. David did it. It wasn't a clumsy gesture, but a deliberate one. A forced punctuation mark in the banal conversation we were having about the traffic on the FDR drive. I watched his long fingers. The ones he always boasted were the hands of an artist fiddling with the crystal stem. He wasn't looking me in the eyes. He hadn't done that for a while. Honestly, ever since we ordered the appetizers, his voice had taken on that tone of fake tenderness he reserved for delivering bad news he thought he could soften. We need to talk about something important. More important than the gridlock in the city on a random Tuesday, I prompted, bringing a sip of mineral water to my lips. The water was cold, bland. Exactly how was I supposed to look on the outside right now? He offered a tense smile, the corners of his mouth tight, always hiding behind that irony. That's one of the things I admire most about you. The phrase was a cliché, a worn-out prelude. My stomach, which until then had remained calm, began to tie itself into a small, cold knot. I wasn't stupid. The last few months, his distance, his urgent work calls at 10 p.m., his sudden interest in always wearing impeccable tailored suits to the office. The puzzle pieces had been scattered there all along, and I had refused to put them together out of laziness, out of fear, out of the immense exhaustion of having to reconstruct a reality. Admiration isn't the only thing you need in a marriage, David, I said, keeping my voice neutral, professional, just like I did in meetings with difficult clients. Exactly. He nodded with too much vehemence, as if I had hit the nail on the head of his script. He took a deep breath. That's the issue. We've reached a point of no return. We've taken different paths. There it was. The cliché pulled straight from a cheap soap opera or a manual for cowardly men. The knot in my stomach turned to ice. I thought of the 15 years together, the 10 years of marriage, the 7 years building Ruiz and Associates. I was the unassociates, the silent partner, the one who solved impossible structural problems, the one who calmed furious clients, the one who had put up the initial capital when his family, so full of imaginary blue blood pedigree, didn't have a dime to invest in the dream of David Ruiz. Lead architect. Different paths, I repeated, tilting my head. Could you be more specific? Because my path the last time I checked was still in our office in our home by your side. He shifted in his chair. The mask of sorrow was beginning to crack, revealing glimpses of irritation. He didn't expect questions. He expected submission. A sob. Perhaps a scene that would allow him to play the role of the saddened but resolute man. Don't make this harder than it is. Sarah. You know it. You live for the work. For your blueprints. Your calculations. It's like talking to a brick wall sometimes. A perfectly calculated brick wall. Sure. But a wall nonetheless. Every word was a nail. And the worst part was that they held a twisted well of truth. Yes. I worked a lot. Someone had to do it while he dedicated himself to attending cocktail parties, acting as the face of the firm, and hunting for pharaonic projects that never materialized. I was in the studio ensuring that the projects we did have moved forward, that deadlines were met, that the numbers balanced. My work was the foundation, his was the facade, and now the facade was complaining that the foundation wasn't decorative enough. I understand, I said slowly, scanning his face, which was beginning to flush. My dedication to the work, which is what is paying for this dinner at Balthazar, among other things, is a problem. And what is the solution you're proposing? That I stop working. What? No. It's not about that. He swallowed hard. It's about a spark. About life. About feeling that someone looks at me as more than just another partner on a project. And then it came out as if he were finally lifting a weight off his chest. Her name is Chloe. The name floated in the air between us, dense as cigarette smoke. Chloe. The intern. 21 years old. Fresh out of design school. With an easy smile and an admiration for Mr. Ruiz that bordered on fanaticism. I had hired her because she had a promising portfolio. What an idiot I was. Chloe. I repeated, entirely devoid of inflection. The girl who handles the 3D renderings. Who always manages to jam the plotter. The one who takes 20 minutes to make a coffee. That Chloe. His irritation flared. Don't look down on her. She understands me. With her, I feel alive. Young. Not always under the microscope of perfect efficiency. His words were clumsy. Stabbing at the woman he thought I was, the cold, calculating one who didn't give him the thrill he craved. He couldn't see. He never had. That my efficiency was the most practical form of love I knew. Keeping his dream afloat. How long? I asked. And my own voice surprised me with its glacial calm. What? How long have you been feeling alive with Chloe? The slight razor-sharp sarcasm slipped into my tone. He lowered his gaze back to the tablecloth. About 6 months. 6 months. Half a year. While I was negotiating with the City Planning Commission for the permits on the Hudson Yards residential project, he was negotiating caresses with a child in the archives room. While I was calming down a furious German client because his hotel deadlines were delayed by David's miscalculation, he was, of course, calming Chloe's nerves over her first project. The rage started then. A slow, terrible heat rising from that knot of ice in my stomach. But I contained it. I compressed it into a deep dark place in my mind. Not now. And your family? I continued as if I were going down a checklist. Patricia. Allison. Do they know? His silence was the answer. A complicit silence. Ashamed. But not ashamed enough. I remembered the last family dinner a month ago. The look of pity from my mother-in-law. Allison's comments about how exhausted David looked. So dedicated to his work. Poor thing. Jason's toast to family supporting each other through hard times. They had been acting. They had all been silently celebrating my imminent downfall. My mother. She didn't understand it at first. David mumbled. Defending the harpy that was his mother. But she just wants me to be happy. Allison. Too. Chloe is. She's normal. She isn't obsessed with her career. She wants a family. Kids. There it was. The coup de grace. The ultimate argument. Me. The sterile professional. Her. The fertile, normal future mother of his heirs. The rage transformed into something deeper. Cleaner. Absolute contempt. I looked at this man. My husband. With whom I had shared dreams. Sweat. And an IKEA mattress in our first walk-up apartment. Now all I saw was an overgrown, selfish child. Terrified of a woman who was his equal or better. Yearning for the cheap admiration of a girl who saw him as a social stepping stone. I set my fork down next to the plate. Carefully. The sound was precise. Final. All the pain. The betrayal. The years of invisible effort condensed into a crystalline certainty. This man and everything he represented. His petty family. His mediocrity. His pathetic new life. No longer deserved a single second of my time. My talent. Or my money. He interpreted my silence as a breakdown. He reached out a hand to touch mine across the tablecloth. I pulled it back before he made contact. Sarah. I'm sorry. Really. I didn't want to hurt you. But I can't keep lying. I need fresh air. I need to start over. Start over with my money. With my work. With the prestige I had helped build. He was going to take Chloe on a honeymoon to somewhere sunny and expensive. Probably paid for with the advance from the Hudson Yards project that I had secured. They were going to try to kick me out of my own life. A strange, calm smile touched my lips. I saw it reflected in the panic that suddenly peeked into his eyes. It wasn't the smile of a broken woman. It was the smile of an architect who has just found the critical failure point in a structure and knows exactly how to trigger its collapse in the most efficient way possible. All right, David, I said. And my voice rang out clear and serene. Like the tolling of a bell. Don't worry anymore, he blinked. Bewildered. It's all right. Yes. You'll get your divorce. I lifted my water glass, which was still full. The ice clinked in your fresh air. He desperately looked for his glass to clink with mine. He grabbed his wine glass, almost knocking it over. His fingers were trembling slightly. To a civilized ending. He stammered. He didn't touch my glass. I lowered it. Civilized. Yes. I nodded. I'll send you the papers. My lawyer will contact yours. I stood up. picked up my purse, and looked down at him. He had the expression of a child who has been handed unexpected candy but is terrified it might be snatched away. Enjoy the dinner. David. You're paying. Of course. Use the corporate Amex if you want. It'll be the last thing you do with it. And before he could react, before he could ask what I meant by that, I turned around and walked out of the dining room. I didn't walk. I floated. The rage, the pain, the humiliation had transmuted into a cold, pure energy into the plan. Because while he was talking about new paths, my mind was already reviewing the LLC's operating agreement, the key client contracts, the intellectual property files, and the bank accounts. He wanted a divorce. I would give him one. And so much more. Stepping out into the cold New York February night, the air hit my face. It wasn't the fresh air he was longing for. It was the biting wind of reality. I took a deep breath and for the first time in years, I felt completely light, empty of him, full of me. I pulled out my phone and scrolled down to Eleanor's contact. I smiled seeing her name. My lawyer. My friend. The only person besides my accountant who knew exactly where every financial skeleton of Ruiz and Associates was buried. She answered on the first ring. Sarah. Everything okay? Her voice was direct. Alert. No. I said. And my smile widened into a fierce grin no one could see. But it will be. I need you to activate Operation Phoenix right now. There was a pregnant silence of total comprehension on the other end of the line. Then Eleanor's voice, hard as steel, replied, It's about damn time. I'll meet you at your apartment in 30 minutes. I'm bringing the champagne. The good stuff. I hung up. I didn't look back at the restaurant. My path, my true path, had just begun. And the first stone, the one I had just laid with my words on that white tablecloth, was the cornerstone of his ruin. The silence in my Tribeca apartment had never been so absolute, nor so deafening. The sounds of the city, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional siren seemed muffled, as if a glass bell had separated me from the world. Or maybe it was the other way around. I was inside in the still freezing eye of the storm and the world outside was boiling. Irrelevant. The phone in my hand weighed like a brick. I had it on the dining table next to the glass of wine I had poured but hadn't touched. I didn't need alcohol. I needed lucidity. A lucidity as sharp as a diamond. The screen lit up. A notification. Then another and another. A relentless ding-ding-ding like a leaky faucet but poisoned. It was coming from the family iMessage group chat. Rui's family. I was still in it. David in his euphoria to start over or in his disregard considering me already a thing of the past hadn't bothered to remove me. A mistake. His first monumental mistake of the many he was about to make. My fingers hovered over the screen. One part of me, the wounded part, the one still bleeding inside, screamed at me not to do it. To throw the damn device out the window. The other part, the one that had smiled in the restaurant, the one that had called Eleanor, was stronger. With a precise movement, I opened the app. The thread of messages exploded before my eyes. It was a tide of obscene happiness, a digital toast over the rubble of my marriage. It had started with David 2 hours after I walked out of Balthazar. David family, I have important news. Sarah and I have decided by mutual agreement to part ways. It was a beautiful chapter. But sometimes people grow in different directions. I ask for your respect regarding this difficult decision for both of us. Mutual agreement. A beautiful chapter. A difficult decision. The nausea rose in my throat. Acidic. The coward couldn't even type the word divorce. Let alone I cheated on her with the intern. The response was immediate. Like a well-trained choir. Patricia. Mom. Oh. My sweet boy. My heart knew it. You were losing your light. Sometimes you have to be brave and prune the dead branches so the new can bloom. I love you so much. This is a new beginning. Allison. Sister. Finally. David. I've told you 1,000 times. Life is too short. Now go live it. You deserve it. Huge hug. Are you coming to Sunday brunch? We're celebrating. Jason. Brother-in-law. Man. Brave decision. Congrats on getting clarity. When a ship takes on water, you've got to know how to swim. Cheers. Attached. A meme of a man throwing a heavy anchor overboard. Patricia. That woman never knew how to give you what you needed. David. Always with her head in the clouds. With her numbers and her blueprints. A real wife is present. You need someone to take care of you. To pamper you. Allison. Totally. Patricia. Besides, this is perfect timing for the family thing. You know, with a young girl with energy. Wanting to build a real home. To give her mother some grandchildren. Which is about time. I read and reread every word. Dead branches. A ship taking on water. Never knew how to give you what you needed. A real home. My reflection in the dark apartment window was a motionless mask. But inside, something finally snapped for good. It wasn't my heart. It was the last illusion. The final foolish hope that deep down this family I had tried to please for a decade harbored some minimal shred of humanity toward me. They didn't. To them, I was always a mistake. An obstacle in the path of their mediocre prince. And now they were toasting to my disappearance. And then she appeared. A new member had been added to the chat. Chloe. Chloe. Hi everyone. I just wanted to thank you all for so much warmth. David has told me so much about you. I feel so lucky to be welcomed like this in such a delicate moment. You are an incredible family. The silence that followed her message lasted barely 3 seconds. It was the time it took them to digest the audacity or the sheer stupidity of the girl showing up like this. So soon. So blatantly. Then the avalanche broke loose again. This time sugar-coated. Directed at her. Patricia. Sweet Chloe. Welcome. Darling. Of course. This family is your family now. David has told us how special you are. I can't wait to meet you in person and give you a real hug. Allison. Hey. Gorgeous. So sweet of you to write. Yes. We are here for whatever you need. David is so lucky to have you. Jason. Welcome to the club. Chloe. I watched. I didn't type anything. I just watched. My pulse, which at first beat fiercely in my temples, had calmed down. It had become a slow, steady, lethal rhythm. I took screenshots one after another, saving every congratulation, every stab, every display of their jubilant hypocrisy. It was documentary proof of the conspiracy. Not for a judge. Legally, it was irrelevant. But for me. So that never, not even in a moment of weakness, would I forget who and what I was fighting against. My fingers moved with surgical precision. I went to the group info. Tapped leave group. A window popped up. Are you sure? I smiled without humor. I already had them saved in my phone and in my memory. I tapped confirm. The group icon vanished from sight. The ding-ding ceased. Silence returned. But it was no longer empty. It was full of purpose. The doorbell rang. 2 sharp, efficient knocks. Eleanor. Not a second before or after the 30 minutes she had promised. I left the phone face down on the table and went to open the door. Eleanor Martinez burst into the apartment like a whirlwind of black wool and suppressed energy. She carried a thick binder under one arm and in her other hand an insulated wine bag with the neck of a champagne bottle poking out. Her sharp, intelligent gaze scanned me from head to toe. Looking for cracks. You look like you've seen a ghost. A bad one, she said without preamble, kicking the door shut behind her. Something like that. A committee of ghosts toasting with cheap Proco. I replied, my voice sounding strangely normal. She nodded seriously and walked straight into the dining room. She set the binder and the bag on the table next to my untouched wine glass and pulled out the bottle. A Dom Perignon to celebrate new beginnings, she declared and began peeling the foil off the cork. Her movements were energetic. Practical. There was no room for pity in her ritual. Did you see the group chat? I asked as I watched her capable fingers untwist the wire cage. Didn't need to. I got pinged the second you hung up on me. Patricia must be drunk on excitement. The old witch. The cork popped with a muted, elegant thud, not spilling a drop. Eleanor filled the 2 flutes she had brought with her and handed one to me. To the sons of digging their own graves. And to us for handing them the shovel. I drank. The sharp bubbles scratched my throat, waking me up even more. I need it to be fast. Eleanor. Clean. And I want it to hurt. She set her glass down, took a seat, and opened the binder. Inside was a meticulously tabbed dossier. Operation Phoenix. As you named it 2 years ago when you first started suspecting the idiot had his head somewhere else. Is ready. I just needed your green light. She looked at me. Final green light. Green. I confirmed without hesitation. Greener than that stupid girl's eyes. A fierce smile crossed Eleanor's face. Perfect. Let's take it piece by piece. First, the company Ruiz and Associates LLC. You hold 51% of the shares. He has 49%. According to the operating agreement I drafted. Bless my chronic distrust in the event of an unresolvable strategic divergence between the partners. The company can be dissolved for cause. The minority partner abandoning executive functions for personal matters that damage the company's image and operations. Plus infidelity with a subordinate creating a toxic work environment and legal risk for harassment. That is more than enough cause. I listened, nodding. Every word was a brick in the wall I was building between my past life and my future. I've drafted the official notice. We will send it to him. To his lawyer if he actually hires one who isn't some cousin. And to the state registry. We freeze commercial activity immediately. Second, she continued, flipping a page. The client portfolio. 80% of the active contracts Hudson Yards. The Fifth Avenue Hotel renovation. The Westchester residential complex are in the LLC's name. But they have key person clauses tied directly to you. Furthermore, the key clients have signed letters of intent in my possession stating that in the event of your departure, the contracts will either be renegotiated directly with you or terminated. Have you contacted them? I asked, taking another sip. This afternoon. Discreetly. A personal call from me. I told all of them there's an internal restructuring and that you personally will reach out to them next week to guarantee continuity. The reaction was unanimous. As long as Sarah is in charge. We're in. Your husband. Well, David. Wasn't even mentioned. A profound relief. Not devoid of bitterness. Washed over me. Years of impeccable work. Sleepless nights of fixing invisible problems were bearing fruit. Loyalty lay where it belonged. With competence. Not with a name on a business card. Third. Eleanor went on. Her tone turning even sharper. Intellectual property. All the designs. Blueprints. Virtual models. And the patents for the energy efficiency system you developed are registered in your personal name or under the holding company you control. 100%. He has no legal access to use them. If he tries, it's a lawsuit he'll lose before it begins. And the bank account? I said. It was a statement, not a question. The company's operating account requires your signature. I've initiated the wire transfer to move the working capital to the accounts of the new entity. Gutierrez Architecture and Design LLC. I left the legal minimum to cover pending payroll and this month's electric bill. Nothing more. When he tries to pay the mortgage on his apartment, your shared apartment, which he requested to keep in the divorce, or the credit card bill for his honeymoon, he'll find a balance of $18.50 for the first time in hours. A real smile loaded with ferocious justice lit up my face. I could picture him at some rooftop bar in Miami trying to pay for a romantic dinner with the corporate card only for it to be declined. The image was so vivid I could almost hear his stammering, his embarrassment, the look of confusion on Chloe's face. There's more, Eleanor said, closing the binder. The office. The commercial lease on Madison is in your name. I sent the landlord the notice of early termination. You have 30 days to vacate. I've hired a moving company to pack up all your things. Your files. Your computer. Your architectural models. And bring them to the storage unit we rented. The rest is either garbage or his problem. I stood up and walked over to the window. Outside, New York sparkled. Indifferent. Somewhere down the coast, David was probably buying sunscreen. Happy. Free. Believing himself the master of his destiny. Completely ignorant that the ground he walked on was no longer ground, but a trapdoor over the abyss. And the divorce? I asked without turning around. The divorce is the least of it. Sarah, Eleanor replied, matching her voice to my thoughts. It's just the wrapping paper. The content is what matters. And the content? The company. The money. The clients. Your reputation is already safe. You'll sign the papers, giving him the apartment in exchange for a clean break where he doesn't ask for alimony, which he wouldn't be entitled to anyway. But it avoids a fight. It will be fast. Mutual agreement. Just like he wants. The sarcasm in her voice was more effective than the champagne. Mutual agreement. I repeated, looking at my reflection in the glass. I no longer saw the betrayed wife. I saw the CEO who had stopped keeping quiet. Perfect. Eleanor walked over and leaned against the window frame beside me. Are you okay? Really? I mean, I sighed. A long sigh that seemed to expel the last remnants of stale air from my lungs. I'm intact. It hurts. It hurts like hell, Eleanor. But the pain is in one place. And in the rest of me, there is a calm. A terrible calm. This is exactly what I have to do. You say it's going to work. Of course. It's going to work, she said, giving my shoulder a light tap. You've been the brains for years. He was just the pretty face. And pretty faces wrinkle. Honey, brains don't. I smiled. I need a week. 1 week without him finding out anything. Let him be far away. Enjoying his cheap honeymoon while we move the pieces. He'll get his week. Eleanor nodded. And when he comes back, he'll find the mirage has vanished. All that will be left is debt. An empty office. And a little girl who will demand the lifestyle she thinks she's entitled to. She picked up her binder and the nearly empty champagne bottle. Tomorrow at 900 a.m. In my office, we sign the first documents and begin building your empire. The real one. When she left, the silence returned. But it didn't weigh me down anymore. It was an expectant silence charged with potential. I picked up my phone, still face down, and flipped it over. The black screen only reflected my face. I no longer felt like crying. I felt like working. Before going to bed, I opened my photo gallery. I scrolled to the oldest folder. I found a picture of David and me on the day we opened the office. We were smiling, holding cheap plastic cups of Proco in front of a badly painted sign. He had his arm around me. I was leaning into him, trusting. I stared at it for a long minute. Then, with a slow, deliberate gesture, I swiped across the image. The menu popped up and I selected delete. It wasn't an act of anger. It was an act of architecture. You start by demolishing what doesn't work so you can build something new on clean foundations. And I, Sarah Gutierrez, had always been a magnificent architect. The air in Eleanor's law office smelled of fresh coffee and hot printer paper. A clean, professional scent that swept away any lingering traces of the toxic emotion from the restaurant or the digital poison of the group chat. I sat in the chair across from her monumental oak desk, feeling the solid leather beneath my palms. It was a client's chair. But today I wasn't a client. I was the commander-in-chief on D-Day. Eleanor was skimming a final document. Her reading glasses perched on the edge of her nose. Everything is ready. It's simpler than it looks. Basically, you're gifting him the Columbus Avenue condo along with its pending mortgage in exchange for a clean settlement where he waives any further claim to shared assets. Which, by the way, according to this notarized inventory we did when you formed the LLC, are basically non-existent beyond that property. She looked up. He thinks he's walking away with the loot. What he's walking away with is a mountain of debt and a legal reminder of your generosity that will forever prevent him from coming after you for a dime. I nodded. The apartment. Our apartment. The place where I had envisioned a future was now just a toxic asset. A dead weight loaded with memories I wanted to burn. Let him have it. Let him live among the ghosts of what he destroyed. Perfect. The office door opened. Lucy, Eleanor's highly efficient paralegal, poked her head in. Eleanor, Mr. Ruiz, and a guest have arrived. Eleanor took off her glasses. Send them in. And Lucy, bring the coffee service. The cheap stuff. The one that tastes like battery acid. A second later, they walked in. David came first, carrying that slouchy posture he used to try and look nonchalant. He wore a light linen suit as if he were already on vacation. Behind him, practically glued to his back, was Chloe. She was dressed in a summery sundress way too short and bright for a legal meeting in the middle of a New York February. She wore a textbook timid smile, and her eyes scanned me with a mix of curiosity and poorly concealed triumph. "Sarah," David said, forcing a deep conciliatory tone. "Thanks for coming. I hope we can do this as civilized as possible." I didn't stand up. I just inclined my head toward the two empty chairs facing the desk. "Have a seat." Chloe sat down, crossing her legs in a studied motion. David stood for a moment, uncomfortable under Eleanor's icy stare. She made absolutely no move to greet them. Finally, he dropped into the chair. "I see you brought moral support," I commented, looking directly at Chloe for the first time. The young woman lowered her gaze for a second, then raised it with a flash of defiance. "Chloe is a part of my life now. Sarah, it's perfectly normal that she's here," David said, placing a hand on her arm. A gesture of possession, of comfort for her. "Not for me, of course," I said, my voice flat as a board. "Transparency is key. Eleanor, if you would." Eleanor slid two thick files across the desk. "The uncontested divorce agreement. Read it over. It basically reflects what Sarah already mentioned. She relinquishes the primary residence to you, David, and you assume the entirety of the pending mortgage. In exchange, there is a dissolution of shared marital assets with no additional compensation. You expressly waive any right to Sarah's present or future assets, including her investments, patents, and intellectual property rights." She paused, looking at David over the rim of the glasses she had put back on. "It is, in short, a great deal for you. You get the apartment and your freedom." David flipped through the pages without really reading. His eyes darted around looking for the key points. Chloe leaned in to look, her shoulder brushing against his. It was an obscene image. "Her investments," David muttered, looking up. "You mean the capital we put into the firm?" "No," Eleanor corrected with a surgeon's smoothness. "I mean the capital Sarah put into the firm from her private trust. It is documented in the operating agreement and the wire transfers. That capital along with the profits generated by it is part of her personal estate, not marital property. The same applies to her patents. She authored them and they are registered in her name. You have no legal claim to them." David's smile froze. "We did those projects together. The firm belongs to both of us. The firm is an LLC. I snapped, speaking harshly for the first time. One in which I am the majority shareholder and from which as of today I am divesting. My lawyer will explain the details of the corporate dissolution when the time is right. Today we are here for the divorce. Are you signing or not?" There was a tense silence. Chloe whispered something in David's ear. He nodded almost imperceptibly and took the expensive pen Eleanor offered him. "Always so practical. Sarah," he said, a thread of resentment in his voice as he scrawled his signature violently on the marked pages. "You never waste time on sentimentalism. Sentimentalism is a luxury I cannot afford," I replied, signing after him with my clear, firm signature. Every stroke was a nail in the coffin. "I have a company to run. Well, now I'll have to rebuild it without dead weight." His face flushed red. "Dead weight? That's what I've been to you." I set the pen down. I looked him dead in the eyes without blinking. "You are the one going on a honeymoon with the intern, David, before the ink on the divorce is even dry. Do not talk to me about sentimentalism." My tone was pure contempt. And he knew it. It hit him harder than a scream. Chloe sat up straight. "Don't talk about me in that tone. David and I love each other. What you two had was dead years ago." For the first time, Eleanor intervened, her voice cracking like a whip. "Miss, I highly recommend you save your romantic opinions for another venue. This is a law office, not the set of a reality TV show." The girl blushed to the roots of her hair and shrank back into her chair. David wrapped a protective arm around her. "You don't have to take this. Honey, this is almost over." Eleanor gathered the signed documents. "Indeed. I will file these with the court. You will receive the final decree in the mail within a few weeks. Until then, I recommend you respect the terms. Meaning zero contact. She looked at David. As for the office, Sarah will be stopping by this afternoon to collect her personal effects. We trust there will be no issue. David stood up rigid. None at all. In fact, the team has prepared a small farewell gathering just to keep things amicable. He said the last words, looking at me with a foolish defiance in his eyes. He wanted to see me uncomfortable. Maybe he wanted to see me cry in front of our colleagues. A strange smile formed on my lips. How thoughtful. Of course. I'll be there. I'd love to say goodbye to the people who have been my colleagues for years. Even if it's just to wish them luck with the new direction of the company. My emphasis on new direction seemed to fly right over his head. He just nodded. Satisfied. Believing he had won a small victory. Then, I'll see you this afternoon. Let's go. Chloe. They walked out without looking back. His chest puffed out. She clung to his arm. The door clicked shut. Elena let out a loud snort. My God. Where did he find her? She looks like a dressed-up farm chicken. I couldn't help a short, humorless laugh. She's his consolation prize. Let him keep her. I stood up, feeling a bizarre sense of relief. As if a tumor had just been excised. I'm going to the office to pack my stuff and say goodbye to my people. Are you sure you want to go to that circus? Eleanor asked, genuine concern in her voice. Absolutely. I want to see it. I want to see his face of triumph. His relief. His smallness. I need to see it so I never forget why I'm doing this and to remind myself who in that office is actually worth anything. The office of Ruiz and Associates smelled of overheated HVAC air and stale Keurig coffee. But it also smelled of tension. A palpable tension that hung like fog between the cubicles. When I walked in, the silence was almost immediate. Some heads popped up from behind their monitors with quick, furtive glances. Others, the younger ones, greeted me with timid, apologetic smiles. I saw Martha, the office manager, a 50-year-old woman, loyal as a dog. She quickly lowered her eyes, her ears turning red. She knew everything. Of course. She was Patricia's, my mother-in-law's official mole in the company. David was already there, standing near the conference table where someone had laid out plastic platters of sad, cold wraps and cans of Diet Coke and Sprite. Chloe was by his side, smiling, handing out napkins. They looked like hosts at a middle school graduation party. Sarah, you made it, David exclaimed with a fake joviality that echoed awkwardly in the open plan space. Look, the team wanted to, have a quiet send-off. So there are no hard feelings. Very considerate, I said, dropping my bag in my old office, the door to which was already missing my nameplate. I walked toward the table. A few people approached. Awkward. Anthony, the senior project manager. A serious, capable guy. He was the first. He held out his hand. Sarah, it's a shame. Really. It has been a privilege working with you. His handshake was firm. Meaningful. Thank you. Anthony. The privilege was mine. Keep doing what you do. You're the best we have. I held his gaze a second longer than necessary. He nodded almost imperceptibly. He knew. Or at least intuited. And he was on my side. He was followed by Lauren, the junior draftswoman I had taught. Almost everything she knew. Her eyes were damp. Sarah. I don't know what to say. This is so I smiled. A real smile this time. It really is. Lauren. But don't worry about it. Keep learning. And if you ever need a letter of recommendation, you know where to find me. I gave her a quick hug. She held on tight for a moment. The atmosphere was surreal. People were chewing on cold wraps in silence, taking tiny sips of soda, looking at David and pretending everything was normal. Then looking at me with a mix of pity and curiosity. Chloe tried to speak to me. Sarah, I hope everything goes really well for you and whatever you do next, she said in a sugary little voice. I looked her up and down. No anger. No hatred. Just a cold evaluating stare. You just focus on learning how to use AutoCAD, Chloe, and try not to make rookie mistakes on the foundation blueprints. It could cost the firm a lot of money. This firm or the next one? Her smile vanished. David frowned. Sarah, there's no need for that. You're right. I interrupted. There's no need. I took a step forward, moving to the center of the room. All eyes locked onto me. I picked up an empty plastic cup and raised it. There was nothing inside. But it didn't matter. I just wanted to thank you all, I said, my voice clear and serene, filling the space. To those of you who have actually worked these past few years. To those who pulled all-nighters, hit impossible deadlines, and dealt with the occasional tantrum. A ripple of nervous laughter went through the room. I take your professionalism with me, and more importantly, your friendship. You are a great team. Or rather, you were. I paused, letting the word "were" hang heavily in the air. I saw David pale slightly. I wish you all the best. I hope the company's new direction is as fruitful as everyone hopes. No one said cheers. No one clapped. Just an uncomfortable silence. I had said exactly what I wanted to say. No well wishes for the company. Only for the people. The people who knew that without me, this place was a ship. Adrift. I set the cup down and went into my office. My things were already in a cardboard box. Some framed photos. The pictures removed. My favorite mug. Some code manuals. A miniature model of our first major project. It wasn't much. The important stuff couldn't fit in a box. The important stuff I carried in my head and on the external hard drive currently sitting in my purse. When I walked out carrying the box, David approached. He had left Chloe chatting with Martha, who was nodding with a forced smile. Sarah, he said, lowering his voice. Did you really have to do it like that? So cold. I stopped. The box wasn't heavy. It was everything else that weighed on me. How did you want it to be? David. With tears. With a speech about the good old days. I shook my head. The good old days are gone. You made sure of that. You don't have to play tough. I know this hurts you. His fake compassion, as phony as a $3 bill, was the final straw. But I didn't get angry. I just felt an infinite exhaustion. Look, David, I said, shifting the box on my hip. Let's leave it at this. We sign the papers. You keep the condo. You keep the girl. You keep this. I gestured vaguely toward the office. And I keep my dignity, my talent, and my freedom. I think I came out ahead. He opened his mouth to reply, but I didn't give him the chance. I turned and walked toward the glass double doors. Before crossing the threshold, I turned back one last time. I didn't look at him, standing there with a scowl. I looked at the office, at the faces watching me. Some saddened, some relieved, some just curious. Good luck, David, I said, my voice utterly devoid of emotion. And I walked out. The heavy glass door clicked shut behind me. I didn't look back. The sound of my heels on the marble lobby floor beat a new, firm rhythm toward the exit, toward the street, toward the rest of my life. When I hit the sidewalk, the chill of the afternoon hit my face. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of exhaust fumes, of the city, of the future. I put the box in the trunk of my SUV. I got into the driver's seat and pulled out my phone. I had a text from Eleanor. Stage 1 complete. I smiled and typed back. Curtain down. The lead actor doesn't even realize the play is over and the theater is about to be demolished. I started the engine. In the passenger seat, sitting on top of some old blueprints, sat a glossy brochure. It was from a commercial real estate broker. It showed available office lofts in Chelsea. Modern, flooded with light, with plenty of room for a brand new studio. I grabbed it and tossed it onto the dashboard, my next destination, before pulling out into traffic. I took one last look at the building that housed what had been my life for 7 years. A life that was now just smoke. Goodbye. I murmured to myself. It wasn't a sad farewell. It was a release. I pressed the gas pedal and merged into the flow of Manhattan traffic, leaving the past behind and accelerating full speed toward my perfectly executed revenge. The Miami sun poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the South Beach Hotel suite, painting the terrazzo floors and David's naked, sleeping body in golden light. In the kitchenette, Chloe, wearing one of his dress shirts that barely reached her thighs, hummed while making espresso. The air smelled of salt, cheap coconut sunscreen, and the remnants of yesterday's expensive dinner. Wake up, sleepyhead, she sang, approaching the bed with 2 steaming mugs. The day is way too beautiful to waste in bed. David opened one eye, then the other. A satisfied smile spread across his lips when he saw her. He reached out and pulled her down, making her spill a few drops of coffee. Careful, beast, she protested, laughing, setting the mugs on the nightstand and falling beside him. Aren't you hungry? We could go down to that beach club. The one with the blue cabanas. Whatever you want. My queen, he mumbled, burying his nose in her neck. Whatever you want. Today and always. It was the 10th time he'd said it in 3 days. And Chloe still blushed like it was the first. She pulled away playfully and grabbed her iPhone from the floor. Leave that alone, he groaned, half joking. Just taking a pic for the grid, she said, aiming the camera. She captured their intertwined feet on the white sheets with the brilliant turquoise Atlantic Ocean framed in the window. She threw a golden hour filter on it, typed the caption number, any new vibe, and posted it to Instagram. The likes started rolling in immediately along with comments from her friends back home. Oh my god. So jealous, and his family. Enjoy? Sweetie. David watched her, propped up on one elbow. A brief flash of unease crossed his eyes when he saw the phone. His own phone was lying silently on the carpet, plugged into the charger. It had vibrated several times during the night. Missed calls from a New York area code. Probably Martha with some administrative nonsense about the cleaning staff's payroll or a toner order. Nothing that couldn't wait. He had been very clear when he left. I need this week completely disconnected. Martha. To recharge. Sarah is gone. So figure it out with what you have. Chloe stood up, stretching like a cat. Freedom tasted sweet to him. Sweet and light. No Sarah constantly scrutinizing his designs. No precise questions about budgets and deadlines. No permanent aura of high-stress demands radiating from her. Here, there was only sun, the ocean, and Chloe's unconditional admiration. We could rent a boat today, she suggested, running her fingers down his back. Or go see the Vizcaya Museum. Or just stay right here. Her voice turned suggestive. David pulled her back into bed. Work could wait. Everything could wait. Meanwhile, 1,300 m away in New York City. The air didn't smell like salt. It smelled like dark roast coffee and intense focus inside the new mostly empty loft of Gutierrez Architecture and Design LLC in Chelsea. The only furniture so far were 3 folding tables, some ergonomic desk chairs, and a massive white whiteboard covered in red, blue, and black marker notes. Sarah, sitting in front of her MacBook with her reading glasses on and her hair in a messy bun, was on speakerphone. Her voice was clear, authoritative, with absolutely no trace of the woman who had signed divorce papers just days ago. Yes, Klaus, I completely understand. The transition will be seamless. All the blueprints for the Hudson Yards project, the structural load calculations and the materials specs are already in my possession. Ruiz and Associates is being dissolved, but I am personally guaranteeing continuity under my new firm. In fact, we can accelerate the delivery timeline. And as we discussed, we're incorporating the new sustainable insulation system. I'll send you the updated contract this afternoon. On the other end of the line, the German developer, Klaus Bauer, grumbled something in his native language before switching to his precise English. Sarah, I work with you. The other one, Mr. Ruiz. He is just parties and empty promises. His departure is a problem for him. Not for me. Send the contract. He hung up. Sarah immediately dialed another number. At the adjacent folding table, Eleanor was reviewing a stack of notarized documents. At a third table, Victor, a veteran architect with silver hair and the air of a wise professor, was scrolling through a contacts list on his iPad. Meredith. Hi. It's Sarah. Yes. Sarah's voice softened slightly as she spoke to the boutique hotel CEO. I'm calling to confirm that the Fifth Avenue renovation is moving forward without a hitch. Absolutely. I've formed my own LLC. Yes. All the documentation transfers over to my name. No. No delays at all. Actually, by centralizing everything through me, communication will be much faster. Perfect. I'll meet you next week to walk you through the rendering updates. Talk soon. She hung up and let out a breath that was more satisfaction than exhaustion. It had been 3 days of this. Ever since the corporate dissolution papers were filed, it was one call after another. They didn't have to beg. They just confirmed her reputation, her solveigny, her steady hand. They were the asset. The name Ruiz and Associates was evaporating like smoke. Victor looked up. I just got off the phone with the Westchester developers. They were thrilled about the dissolution. They liked working with you. Not the brand. I've routed the contract to the new entity. Just needs your signature. He paused, watching her. It's impressive. Sarah, you've been building this quietly for years. A bulletproof network of personal trust. It wasn't a network. She corrected dryly. They trusted the results. Not the sales pitch. David was the pitch. I was the results. Eleanor held up a document. Notification from Chase. The operating account for Ruiz and Associates has been emptied as requested. Only the minimum remains to cover the pending payroll and this month's utility bills. The wire transfer to Gutierrez Architecture cleared this morning. I've also submitted cancellation requests for all company services, corporate cell phones, internet lines, software subscriptions, all terminated as of the last day of the month. A wolfish grin spread across her face. I even included the subscription to Architectural Digest that your ex loves so much. They'll keep sending it, but to his home address and in his personal name. Wouldn't want him to lose touch with the industry. Sarah didn't smile. She nodded. Good. And the intellectual property? Everything is registered to your name or your holding company. I sent a standard cease and desist to the old Madison Avenue address warning that any unauthorized use of the designs, patents, or methodologies owned by Sarah Gutierrez will result in immediate litigation. It's a formality, but it draws a hard line. And him? Victor asked curiously. Hasn't he called? Hasn't he tried to reach out to any clients? Sarah glanced at her personal iPhone. A couple of texts from friends checking in. Nothing from him. Nothing from the old office. No. He's disconnected. Literally. His corporate phone must be off or out of data. Sarah said. Martha, the office manager, called me yesterday in a panic, saying she couldn't reach him to sign some vendor checks. I told her very politely that I no longer work there and that it's no longer my problem. And what did she do? Eleanor asked, raising an eyebrow. I assume she called Patricia. Sarah said with a hint of bitterness. And Patricia probably told her not to bother her precious son during the most crucial week of his happiness. Victor shook his head. Incompetence, when aligned with arrogance, is a dish that always gets cold on its own. And when it gets cold, it rots. Sarah's phone buzzed. This time it was a text from Chloe. Sarah blinked. Surprised. She opened it. It was a photo. Chloe and David smiling with the ocean behind them, sitting at a restaurant with checkered tablecloths. Below it was a message. Thinking of you. Sarah, I hope you find your peace. Life sometimes takes us down unexpected paths. But everything happens for a reason. Sarah read the message out loud. An uncomfortable silence filled the loft. Seriously? Eleanor scoffed. Peace. Hugs. The sheer audacity. No. Sarah said. Her voice strangely calm. It's not audacity. It's pure unadulterated ignorance. Happy ignorance. She thinks she hit the jackpot. She thinks this is some romantic drama where she's the young heroine rescuing the prince from the evil workaholic witch. She doesn't have the faintest idea that her prince is about to lose his kingdom. She doesn't even know the kingdom was never his to begin with. She placed the phone face down on the table as if she had touched something dirty. It's better this way. Let them enjoy their romance. The higher they climb, the harder the fall. Victor watched her with a mix of admiration and concern. Sarah, what you're doing is legally flawless, but it's brutal. Are you sure you don't want to leave him some sort of out? A lifeline? Sarah turned to him and her eyes for the first time in days showed a flash of the frozen fury burning inside her. An out Victor like the one he left me blindsiding me after 6 months of lies. Going on a honeymoon with an intern while his family toasted to my firing. The out of signing papers that left me with nothing. Assuming I was the idiot who would walk away with my tail between my legs. She took a deep breath, reining in the emotion. No. There are no lifelines. There are consequences. And he is going to learn in the harshest way possible that actions have consequences. That you cannot betray, humiliate, and discard the person holding up your world and expect that world to remain standing when she walks away. Her tone was so cold, so loaded with absolute certainty that Victor simply nodded. Eleanor, on the other hand, was smiling with deep satisfaction. All right. Final phase, the lawyer said, sliding another document toward Sarah. The official notice to all vendors, contractors, and the Madison Avenue building management, informing them of the dissolution of Ruiz and Associates, and that from now on all professional activity of architect Sarah Gutierrez will be conducted from this new address. It goes out today. Sarah took the document. She read it. A declaration of independence. A death certificate. She signed it with a quick decisive stroke. Send it. In Miami. The late afternoon sun was fading into a soft gold. David and Chloe were strolling along the marina, holding hands. She was wearing a new straw hat. He wore a linen shirt he'd bought that very afternoon. Charged to the company Amex. It's an investment in my image, he had told himself. When we get back, Chloe said enthusiastically, squeezing his arm. Can I redecorate the office a little? Take down that ugly abstract painting in the lobby. Add some plants. Maybe paint the conference room a brighter color. Something younger. More us. Sure, baby. Whatever you want. He replied, taking a sip of his beer. You'll run the place. Can I stop being an intern? Obviously. I'll be the project director or head of client relations. Something like that. Oh, David. She squealed, stopping to give him a kiss. That would be incredible. And maybe we could. I don't know. Move into a bigger place. The condo on Columbus is fine. But it's kind of old. We need something more modern with a view. All in due time. He said, stroking her cheek. A small ping from his personal phone made him glance at the screen. It was a text from his sister. Allison. How's the honeymoon? Lovebirds? Mom and I are looking at wedding dress catalogs just in case. David smiled. Finally. His family saw him as the winner. The happy man who had taken control of his life. He locked the phone and shoved it into his pocket. Nothing was going to ruin this night. Nothing. Hey, Chloe said, a mischievous glint in her eyes. Why don't we call Martha just to check in on how things are going at the office just in case? David made a face. Why? Let them handle it. That's what I pay them for. Besides, he added, dropping his voice to a confidential tone, I think it's better to give them some distance. Let them feel my absence. They'll appreciate my return a lot more. You're right. Chloe nodded, instantly convinced. You're a genius. And they kept walking, imagining their glorious future, completely ignorant that back in New York, the foundation of that future hadn't just cracked. It had been demolished entirely, brick by brick, with the cold, meticulous efficiency of the woman they thought they had defeated. The honeymoon continued, but their paradise was just a mirage, and the real desert awaited them, arid and unforgiving. Rounding the corner, the air inside the JFK taxi smelled of cheap pine air freshener and the sticky fatigue of a short domestic flight. David, leaning against the window, watched the Manhattan skyline come into view with a tired but satisfied smile. He was wearing the new designer sunglasses he'd bought at the airport. Duty-free. Beside him, Chloe was scrolling through the photos on her phone, her fingers swiping over images of white sand beaches and candle-lit dinners. Look at this one, babe, she said, showing him a selfie where they both looked deeply tanned and laughing with the Vizcaya Gardens in the background. We should print this and put it in the lobby to bring good vibes to the office. Great idea, he agreed without looking away from the window. A small prick of anxiety began to gnaw at his stomach. He had turned on his phone when they landed, and the screen had erupted in a cascade of notifications. Dozens of missed calls, mostly from Martha, the office manager, several from unknown numbers, and a few frantic texts from his sister Allison that simply read, "Call me as soon as possible. It's an emergency." He had brushed it off. Martha was an alarmist. Probably some issue with the con bill or the printer toner. Nothing he couldn't fix in 5 minutes. And his sister probably just wanted spicy details about the honeymoon. He wasn't in a rush. The feeling of being the master of his own destiny, of his own time, was too new and pleasurable to ruin. "Are we going straight to the office?" Chloe asked excitedly. "I want to see everyone's faces. I bet they missed us so much." David hesitated. The idea of facing the mountain of delayed work suddenly felt suffocating. "Let's go to the apartment first. We drop the bags, shower, and then head over. No rush." "But David," Chloe pouted, "I'm so excited to start to feel like it's my place now, too." He stroked her cheek. "All in good time, princess. One more day won't change anything." The yellow cab pulled up to their building on Columbus Avenue. While he paid the driver, David noticed a thick white envelope sticking out of his mailbox in the vestibule. It had his bank's logo on it. A sharper pang of unease hit his chest. Probably just the monthly statement. Nothing major. They went upstairs. The apartment smelled stale, dusty, and silent. Chloe threw open the windows, complaining about the stuffy air. David, however, went straight to the stack of mail. There wasn't just one envelope from the bank. There were 3. Plus one from the IRS and one from a law firm he didn't recognize. He dropped his suitcase on the hardwood floor, and with fingers that were beginning to tremble slightly, he tore open the bank envelope. It was a notice of a bounced payment. The latest mortgage installment, which should have been auto-drafted days ago, had been rejected due to insufficient funds in the linked account. The linked account was the company's operating account. "What's wrong, babe?" Chloe asked, walking over. "Nothing. A bank error," he muttered much more gruffly than he intended. He ripped open the IRS envelope. It was a payment demand. The Q2 corporate taxes, which according to his math, Martha should have paid weeks ago. The envelope from the law firm contained a formal letter written in cold, heavily footnoted legalese notifying him of the immediate termination of the commercial lease for the Madison Avenue office due to 3 consecutive missed rent payments and the initiation of eviction proceedings. His heart slammed against his ribs. A cold sweat broke out on the back of his neck. This couldn't be real. It was a mistake. A sick joke. Martha had lost her mind. Sarah always handled these things. But Sarah wasn't here anymore. "David, you're pale," Chloe said, alarm creeping into her voice. "It's nothing. Just administrative," he managed to stammer, clutching the envelopes to his chest. "I'll call Martha right now and fix it in 5 minutes. Go take a shower." But Chloe didn't move. She watched him, her welcome home smile completely gone. David pulled out his personal phone, found Martha's contact, and hit call. It rang and rang until it went to voicemail. He hung up. He dialed the office landline. It gave a fast, unnatural, busy signal. "Come on," he said, his voice sounding strange, strangled. "We're going to the office right now." The cab ride to Midtown was suffocatingly silent. David didn't take his eyes off his phone, firing off texts to Martha that said, "Delivered," but remained unread. Chloe chewed her lip, staring out the window at the passing city blocks without really seeing them. When the cab stopped in front of the Madison Avenue office building, David threw a 20 at the driver and bolted out before the car even came to a full stop. He looked up. The brass plaque reading Ruiz and Associates was still there next to the entrance. A fleeting feudal wave of relief washed over him. But then he looked down at the heavy glass entry doors. 2 thick strips of plastic tape, white and red, formed a massive X across the doors. Slapped right in the center was an official notice bearing a state seal. The bold print was unmistakable. Bank Levi. Seizure of premises. Access prohibited by court order. It listed the name of the bank that held the firm's credit lines. Taped next to it were several envelopes with clear windows displaying his name. Letters from creditors. David froze. For a second, the world lost all its sound. There was only the dull, monstrous thumping of panic in his ears. What? What is this? Chloe's voice broke the silence, sharp and ragged beside him. Where is your company? David, what is this? He stumbled forward like a sleepwalker. His fingers brushed the plastic tape. It was real. He peeled one of the envelopes off the glass. It was from an IT services company demanding payment for 6 months of CAD software subscriptions. Another was from Con Edison notifying him of service disconnection for non-payment. Another from the building management confirming the lease termination and the eviction order. No, this can't be happening, he mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. It's a mistake. It has to be a mistake. He pulled out his phone, his hands now shaking uncontrollably. He searched his contacts for Klaus Bauer, the German developer for the flagship Hudson Yards project. He dialed. It rang several times before someone picked up. Bauer. A dry voice answered. Mr. Bauer. Good morning. This is David Ruiz. A cutting silence. Then the voice even colder. Ah, Mr. Ruiz. I was just about to have my people contact you. Or rather, my legal team wanted to speak with your legal team. Given the dissolution of your LLC and your inability to fulfill the contract, we have initiated litigation to reclaim the advanced payment and seek damages for breach of contract. All communication from now on will go through our attorneys. Good day. Click. David stared at his phone. Stunned. Dissolution of the LLC. Inability to fulfill. The words echoed like funeral bells in his head. He dialed another number. The Westchester developers. Hello. A secretary answered. Put me through to Mr. Dominguez, please. It's David Ruiz from Ruiz and Associates. One moment. Please hold music. Then the developer's voice deep, stripped of its usual cordiality. David, I've been trying to reach you. Listen. We received formal notice of the dissolution of your company and that Sarah Gutierrez is taking over the project solo under her new firm. It seemed like the most sensible move given the situation. We no longer have a contractual relationship with you. Please do not call this line for professional matters again. Goodbye. Click. No. David screamed, slamming his palm against the glass door, making the tape pull taut. That's my company. My project. Chloe was staring at him, her eyes wide with terror, tears starting to spill down her cheeks. David, please, what is happening? Tell me this is a joke. A sick joke. He couldn't hear her. He was dialing another number. Meredith, the hotel CEO. It went straight to voicemail. He tried a materials supplier. The person who answered upon hearing his name said dryly, I'm sorry. We've been instructed not to take your calls. All outstanding debt has been forwarded to a collections agency. One after another. Every call was a brick wall. A rejection. A you don't exist. The terrible, merciless reality began to cut through the fog of his disbelief. It wasn't a mistake. It was a collapse. A planned, meticulous, total collapse. He slumped against the glass door, sliding down until he was sitting on the cold concrete sidewalk of Madison Avenue. The phone slipped from his lifeless fingers. Chloe dropped to her knees beside him, shaking his shoulder. David, answer me. Say something. What did we do? Where is our money? He looked up at her, his eyes glassy, wearing the expression of a shipwreck survivor watching the last piece of debris drift away. I don't know, he whispered, and his voice sounded like a stranger's. I really don't know. The we had disintegrated. Now there was only a desperate I and a terrified you who was beginning to understand far too late that the prince in her fairy tale had no kingdom. That he never had won. And that the wicked which they had laughed about hadn't been defeated at all. She had been the one silently holding up the foundation. And when she walked away, she took the whole damn building with her. The elevator ride up to the 4th floor of the pre-war building on the Upper East Side smelled of 3-day-old fried food and cheap lavender masking spray. David pressed the buzzer to his mother's apartment with a trembling finger. Beside him, Chloe nervously adjusted her bangs in the reflection of the brass doorknob. She was still wearing the same summery Miami dress, which now looked cheap and entirely out of place in the chilly New York hallway. The door opened. It wasn't Patricia. It was his sister Allison, wearing a cooking apron and an expression caught between surprise and intense annoyance. "David," she said, keeping the door half closed. "We weren't expecting you. What are you doing here? We thought you were still on your honeymoon." "We had to come back early," he mumbled, pushing past her into the apartment without waiting for an invitation. Chloe followed him like a shadow. Patricia's apartment was a museum of her pretensions. Heavy pseudo-antique furniture, worn Persian rugs, and a stale scent of boiled chicken that was his mother's olfactory signature. Patricia appeared in the kitchen doorway, drying her hands on a dish towel. Her sharp-featured face, locked in a perpetual grimace of disapproval, tightened when she saw them. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, not taking a step closer. "Did something happen?" "Mom," David began, his voice breaking. The combination of fear, humiliation, and the oppressive familiarity of this place disarmed him. I need to talk to you. To all of you. It's an emergency." Allison shut the front door with a heavy thud. Her husband, Jason, poked his head out of the living room where the blue glow of a television flickered. "Emergency? What kind of emergency?" Patricia asked, stepping slowly forward, her eyes scrutinizing her son before darting suspiciously to Chloe. "Did you two break up already? Because I told you." "David. These impulsive young things. We haven't broken up," Chloe snapped, her voice shrill with tension. "It's way worse." Patricia and Allison exchanged a loaded look. Jason stepped into the hallway, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed, an expectant spectator. "Well, sit down and speak, son, because you look like a wreck," Patricia ordered, pointing to the faded velvet sofa. She took her seat in her favorite armchair, the throne from which she judged the world. Allison remained standing next to Jason. David collapsed onto the sofa. Chloe sat perched on the edge next to him. He took a deep breath, desperately trying to order the chaos in his brain. "The firm," he stammered. "The office is padlocked. Bank levies, eviction notices. The clients, they all hung up on me. They say the LLC is dissolved. That Sarah took all the projects. The banks, the vendors, they're all coming after me for money. A lot of money." The words spilled out in jagged bursts. "I don't understand anything. I don't know what happened." A thick silence filled the room. Patricia didn't blink. Allison frowned. Jason cleared his throat. "What a mess," Allison finally said. Her tone held no sympathy, only annoyance. "But how is that possible? You were the majority partner." "No. I thought I was." But David swallowed hard. According to the operating agreement, Sarah held 51%, and it looks like the initial capital was all hers from a trust fund. The projects had key person clauses tied to her. The clients only wanted to work with her, and she triggered some clause. She dissolved the company. She took everything. Everything. Patricia let out a sound somewhere between a scoff and a growl. "That witch." She spat, her eyes suddenly burning with bitter rage. "She set a trap for you. She knew exactly what she was doing. She waited until you left with her to strike. She's a sociopath. A total." "Mom, please," David interrupted, rubbing his face with his hands. "This isn't the time to insult her. This is the time to help me. I'm ruined. The firm is gone. The condo has the massive mortgage on it. And the corporate account that paid for it is empty. If I don't pay, they'll foreclose. I have nothing." The word ruined echoed in the stuffy room like a gunshot. Patricia pulled. Allison took a literal step back as if her brother's poverty were contagious. "What about the condo?" Jason asked, using his cold, practical finance bro tone. "It's in your name now. You could sell it. Cover the holes." "I can't sell it right now," David shouted. "With the market like this and the debt attached, I wouldn't even clear half of what I owe. Plus, I need a place to live." "Where are we going to live?" he added, grabbing Chloe's hand. It was ice cold. Patricia watched the gesture. Her lips pressed into a thin white line. That apartment was always a mistake. Too expensive for what it was. Sarah always wanted to show off. And now you're paying the price. Sarah paid the down payment. Mom. David roared, losing his temper. Sarah paid most of the mortgage. Sarah kept everything afloat. And I, like an idiot, refused to see it. Admitting his own stupidity out loud was even more painful than the financial ruin. Chloe looked at him, shocked. It was the first time she had heard him admit it. Well, whining about it now isn't going to fix it. Allison cut in impatiently. We need solutions. What are you going to do? That's why I'm here, David said, lowering his voice. A shadow of his former arrogance reappeared like a weak ghost. I need a loan. An advance. Something to pay the most urgent debts. To calm the creditors down. To rent a smaller studio to work from. Mom. You have the money from Grandpa's inheritance. It's not a lot. But are you out of your mind? Patricia's voice shrieked, filled with genuine panic. My money? My father's money for your foolishness and your bankrupt macho debts? Absolutely not. But it's my only way out. David pleaded, standing up. If I don't, I'll drown. I'll lose the condo. They'll garnish my wages if I can even find a job. Because with this stain on my record, no firm in the city is going to hire me. Then you should have thought about that before you started screwing the office intern. Allison spat, a suppressed resentment finally bubbling to the surface. It was all fine and dandy when you were partying on the beach. Huh? Now that the check has arrived, you come crying to mommy. Real manly David. Hey, back off. Chloe yelled, jumping up. You can't talk to him like that. He's destroyed. You're his family. You're supposed to support him. Patricia turned her gaze on her, loaded with all the contempt she had accumulated over the past few weeks. You shut your mouth. You are the cause of all this. If you hadn't been throwing yourself at him with your doe eyes and your miniskirts, my David wouldn't have lost his mind. He wouldn't have left his wife, who with all her weird quirks at least kept things in order. This is your fault. Chloe took the hit like a physical slap. She stepped back, her mouth hanging open, tears of pure rage filling her eyes. My fault. You cheered him on. You toasted me in the group chat. You called me daughter. You're all a bunch of hypocrites. How dare you come into my home and insult us? Allison shrieked, stepping forward. People respect this house. You're a nobody from some trashy suburb coming here to lecture us. Get out of my house. Enough. David roared, stepping between his sister and Chloe. She is not to blame for any of this. The blame is mine and yours for always telling me I deserved better. That Sarah wasn't enough. That I was some misunderstood genius. You filled my head with smoke. And now when the smoke clears and all that's left is ash, you turn your backs on me. Jason intervened, putting a hand on Allison's shoulder. Everybody calm down. Yelling isn't fixing anything. David, look. It's a messed up situation. We see that. But your mother is right. Her money is her safety net. She can't risk it. And Allison and I, with our mortgage, with the kids' private school, we don't exactly have cash to burn. David looked at his brother-in-law, then his sister, and finally his mother. In their faces, he saw no love, no compassion. He saw fear. The fear that his failure would splash onto them, that he would drag them down into the mud with him. He saw the rapid, ruthless calculation of self-preservation. The clan was closing ranks not to protect their wounded member, but to expel him and avoid the infection. A bitter, raspy laugh tore from his chest. So that's how it is. The hugs, the toasts, the you deserve to be happy. It was only valid as long as my happiness didn't cost you a dime. As long as it was sunshine, beaches, and pretty Instagram photos. The second it smells like bankruptcy, like real problems, you turn into this. 3 terrified strangers. Don't speak to your mother that way. Patricia scolded, but her voice had lost its power. She was pale, gripping the arms of her chair as if it were a life raft. My mother died the moment she decided her comfort was worth more than her son. David spat. The terrible words left even him trembling. He grabbed Chloe by the arm. Let's get out of here. There is nothing for us in this nest of vipers. Wait. Allison yelled as they reached the front door. What are you going to do? Where are you going to go? David turned back. In his eyes, there was no longer pleading, only an icy contempt that mirrored their own. That's none of your business. As of today, you are none of my business. Enjoy your normally. They walked out into the hallway, leaving behind a silence thick with guilt, fear, and resentment. The door shut behind them with a definitive thud. In the elevator, David leaned against the wall, breathing heavily. Tears of rage, pain, and absolute impotence burned his eyes, but they didn't fall. Chloe cried silently beside him. I'm sorry, he managed to say. His voice. I'm sorry for everything. For dragging you into this. No. It's not your fault, she sobbed. But her voice lacked conviction. The dream had vanished. And the raw reality of a ruined man with no family, no job, and a mountain of debt was too massive. Too ugly for her 21 years. What now? David, she asked. Her voice barely a thread. Where do we go? He closed his eyes. The condo on Columbus Avenue, with its pile of bills and foreclosure warnings, waited for them like a trap. They didn't have money for a hotel. They had nowhere else to go. Home, he murmured without opening his eyes. For now. Home and tomorrow. Tomorrow. I'll try to find Sarah. I have to talk to her. There has to be a mistake. There has to be a solution. But in his heart, a dark new space had opened up that afternoon. He knew there was no mistake. He knew the only solution Sarah had planned was ensuring his fall was just as thunderous, just as total as his betrayal had been. And for the first time, a terrifying question crossed his mind. What if everything from the very beginning, from his supposed discovery of Chloe, had been part of her plan? The idea was insane, paranoid, but the perfect vacuum she had left in her wake was the exact shape of a vengeance calculated down to the last penny. The Odin in Tribeca smelled of history, strong espresso, and the ghosts of literary conspiracies and private defeats lingering in its dark wood paneling. It was the perfect place for what was about to happen. I sat at a booth in the back near a window looking out onto the busy West Broadway sidewalk. I wore a simple black pantsuit. My hair pulled back into a flawless chignon. It was an armor, but it served the same purpose. In front of me, a cup of black coffee was getting cold, untouched. I had no intention of drinking it. I needed all my clarity. David arrived 10 minutes late. I watched him fumble with the heavy door and scan the dim restaurant. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 10 days. The light Miami linen suit was deeply wrinkled. His shirt was untucked. There were dark circles under his eyes, and the several days' worth of stubble on his jaw wasn't a styling choice. It was pure neglect. When he spotted me, his face cycled through a rapid spectrum of emotions. Relief, hope, and finally a flicker of his old arrogance, quickly extinguished by the sheer desperation pooling in his pupils. He approached, swaying slightly. He smelled of nervous sweat and defeat. Sarah, he said when he reached the table. His voice was raspy, like he hadn't spoken in days. David, I replied, making no move to stand. I pointed to the chair across from me. Sit. He dropped into the booth as if his bones were made of lead. A waiter approached, but David waved him off with a harsh gesture. His eyes never left mine. Starved, pleading. How could you? He stammered, skipping all pleasantries, his voice trembling with suppressed emotion. How could you do this to me? Ruin me? Humiliate me? Leave me out on the street? I looked at him steadily. I felt nothing. No anger. No pity. Not even satisfaction. Just a clinical curiosity. As if I were observing a rare failed specimen. I didn't leave you on the street. David, I said slowly, measuring every word. You have a condo. The condo you explicitly asked to keep in the divorce. I simply granted your request. But you took everything else, he exploded, slamming his fist on the table, making my spoon rattle. The firm. The clients. The money. You destroyed my life. A few heads turned from nearby tables. I lowered my voice, but maintained its lethal intensity. No, David. You destroyed your life. Or more precisely, you destroyed the life I built for you. I simply packed up my tools when I realized the lead architect didn't know how to use them and was instead using the blueprints to set the house on fire. He shook his head vehemently. That company was ours. We built it together. We built a facade. I corrected coldly. A very pretty facade with your name on the door. With your speeches at the networking galas. With your smile for the Architectural Digest photos. But the foundation, the load-bearing walls, the structural plans, the cement holding it all up, that was mine. The initial capital for my trust fund. The key clients whom I convinced to sign and whom I kept happy every time your designs failed or your deadlines slipped. The energy efficiency system that won us the AIA award. A patent registered in my name. The result of my research. My sleepless nights. You just provided the face. And a face without the brains behind it is just an empty mask. Every word was a hammer blow. I watched him crumble in the booth. His aggressive defensiveness giving way to a painful disbelief. That's not true, he muttered, but without conviction. I led. I made the decisions. What decisions? David. I leaned forward slightly. The decision to hire Chloe? The decision to take her on vacation while the vendor invoices piled up. The decision to ignore the calls from Chase Bank because you were too busy being happy. You made those decisions entirely on your own. And those decisions are what brought you to this table. Demanding explanations for the consequences of your own actions. You set a trap for me, he accused, pointing a trembling finger at me. You let me go. You let me sign those papers. You let me get my hopes up. A cold smile touched my lips. A trap. You offered to keep the condo. I gave it to you. You happily divested yourself from me and my assets. Why? Because you thought you were freeing yourself from the nagging wife to start a shiny new life with your young intern. You signed everything without reading it. Without asking questions. Without consulting a lawyer who wasn't your brother-in-law's idiot buddy. That's not a trap. David. That's stupidity. And stupidity isn't a crime. It's just very, very expensive. He gasped, looking as though he'd been punched in the gut. His eyes scoured my face, searching for some trace of the woman he had known. The woman who loved him, who tolerated him. He didn't find her. Instead, he found an unflappable, lethal stranger. And the company? He asked in a hoarse whisper. The dissolution. The clients. How did you move so fast? Because I've been preparing for this for years, I replied without a shred of triumphalism. Just the icy detachment of someone stating a fact. Eleanor drafted the LLC operating agreement with clauses you never bothered to read. The client contracts had addendums that tied the work specifically to me. The intellectual property was always mine. I just had to push a button. And I pushed it the exact same night you told me at Balthazar that you needed fresh air. I gave you all the fresh air in the world. David. A total vacuum. He ran a hand over his face, sinking into himself. I need money. Sarah. He confessed. It was the voice of a frightened child. The banks. The creditors. They're going to foreclose on the condo. Chloe is hysterical. My family. A grimace of pain and disgust twisted his lips. My family turned their backs on me. I know. I said simply. He looked up. Shocked. How? Because your family is predictable. David. They love the shine. The success. The facade. When the facade crumbles and all that's left is ruins, they get scared. They hide. It's not personal. It's survival instinct. What they don't know is that the rot was always there. Right beneath the paint. I was just the fresh coat of paint. We sat in silence for a moment. The low murmur of the restaurant, the clattering of dishes, formed an absurd counterpoint to our conversation. What do you want me to do? He asked finally, completely defeated. You want me to beg to gravel? Tell me. I'll do it. I observed him. This spectacle of humiliation which I had so desperately craved during my darkest nights now felt profoundly pathetic. I don't want anything from you, David, I said. It was the absolute truest thing I had spoken in a long time. I don't want your money because you don't have any. I don't want your apologies because they wouldn't be sincere. I don't want you to beg. Nothing you say or do will change what I've already done. I've founded my own firm, Gutierrez Architecture. I've recovered my clients. I've saved my team. We have moved on. Without me? The question slipped out like a whip crack, loaded with a disbelief that bordered on the infantile. Yes, without you. Turns out it's a lot easier than I thought. Actually, it's like working with double the efficiency and half the drama. His pride, that final stubborn vestige of his old self, flared briefly. You are cruel. Sarah. You always were cold and calculating. Yes, I nodded, unflinching. And that coldness is what paid for your tailored suits, your expensive dinners, your networking trips, and your honeymoon in Miami with your intern. So, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to hold on to my coldness. It seems to be a much more valuable asset than your warmth. He stared down at his hands which were trembling on the table. When he looked up again, his eyes were filled with a despair so deep it almost managed to move me. And what do I do now? He asked. This time there was no accusation, just a genuine terrified question. Where do I go? That, I said, picking up my purse and sliding a $20 bill under the cold coffee cup, is the first intelligent question you've asked me in years. And unfortunately for you, it's also the first one you have to answer completely alone, without your family, without Chloe, who is probably packing her bags the second she finishes counting the zeros on your debt. And certainly without me. I stood up. He remained seated, looking at me like a castaway, watching the final rescue boat sail over the horizon. Did you ever love me? The question tumbled from his lips like a final death rattle. A desperate attempt to find meaning. A crack in my armor. I paused, standing tall. I looked down at him from the height that certainty provides. I loved you, David. I loved you enough to carry the weight of your mediocrity, your tantrums, and your vanity all these years. I loved you enough to build a world custom fit for you and pretend you were the one who designed it. That is over. The love ended the day you decided my worth was less than that of a little girl who admired you blindly. What I feel for you now isn't hatred. It's indifference. And it is the most liberating thing I have ever experienced in my life. Without waiting for a response, I turned and walked toward the exit. I felt his gaze on my back heavy. Incredulous. I didn't turn around. When I pushed through the doors, the daylight of New York City, gray and brisk, hit my face. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of exhaust, of the city, of the future. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from Elena. Meeting with the Korean investors confirmed for 11:00 a.m. Tomorrow. Bring the 3D renders for the bioclimatic tower. They're going to love it. I smiled. A genuine small but fiercely authentic smile. I put my hands in my pockets and walked with a firm step down West Broadway. Walking away from the Odeon. Away from the smell of defeat and away from the human wreckage I had just left behind. Sitting at a table, wondering where to go. I didn't care anymore. My path was finally my own. And it was brilliant. The air inside the Chelsea Gallery smelled of French champagne, expensive perfume, and anticipation. A polite shower of applause had just died down, leaving behind a hum of excited conversation. The overhead gallery lighting, white and pure, bathed the architectural models, the large-scale renderings, and the technical diagrams covering the brick walls. In the center of the room, on a discreet lucite pedestal, a plaque read, Gutierrez Architecture Launch. I, Sarah Gutierrez, stepped down from the small podium after a 5-minute speech. Short, direct, devoid of hollow gratitude. I had spoken about integrity, about silent innovation, about building from the foundation up, not from the facade down. The crowd, a mix of high net worth clients, prestigious colleagues, architectural press, and a few old acquaintances driven more by morbid curiosity than loyalty, had listened with a rapt attention that was the best toast I could have asked for. That was perfect. Sarah. Concise and lethal. Victor murmured, appearing at my side and handing me a glass of sparkling water. His presence, his public backing had been the ultimate blessing from the industry elite. It wasn't a speech. It was a weather report. Clear skies and tailwinds. I replied, flashing a smile. My eyes scanned the room. There was Klaus Bauer, the German developer, chatting animatedly with Meredith, the hotel CEO, pointing at the model of the bioclimatic tower. Our new flagship project in the corner. Anthony, my former project manager and now my director of operations, was enthusiastically explaining technical specs to a group of Korean investors. Lauren, my draftswoman and now my team coordinator, was handling a pair of journalists from Architectural Record. Everything was fluid, professional, a tangible future. Elena parted the crowd with her ever-present iPad and a satisfied wolfish grin. Almost 100% attendance from the A-list. The Koreans are blown away. Bauer literally just told me, you can smell the talent in here. Not just the cologne. Oh. And look who had the nerve to crash, she added with a barely perceptible nod toward the entrance. I turned my head. Standing near the registration table, holding an empty champagne flute and wearing an expression somewhere between lost and desperate, was Martha, the former office manager of Ruiz & Associates. She was wearing a blazer that had to be 10 years old. Our eyes met. She flushed crimson, took a sip from her empty glass, and quickly looked down, feigning sudden intense interest in the exhibition brochure. She's here looking for a job, Eleanor said, devoid of any pity. According to my sources, she's been blasting her resume all over town for weeks. No one is biting. The stain of your ex-firm's bankruptcy is huge. And since she was the office manager, the industry considers her at best grossly incompetent. She isn't incompetent, I said, turning away, losing interest. She's weak. And she was loyal to the wrong person. Let her keep looking. We don't have room for the weak here. Just then, my personal phone, silenced in my blazer pocket, vibrated. A text from an unsaved number, but with a New York area code. I opened it. Sarah, it's Chloe. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this. I left him. I left David. I couldn't take it anymore. He's living in a basement in deep Queens, surrounded by boxes and debt collection notices. He can't find a job. His family won't even call him. He's like a ghost. And I can't be the girlfriend of a ghost. This wasn't what I wanted. I am so sorry for all the damage we did to you. Truly. I read the message twice. Then, without my expression changing a fraction of an inch, I deleted it. It wasn't an apology. It was the surrender of the final illusion. The final nail in the coffin. I felt nothing. Or perhaps a distant twinge of something that might have been pity had I not been so damn busy living my life. Bad news? Eleanor asked, watching me. Old news. Rotting exactly where it belongs, I replied, slipping the phone back into my pocket. Let's talk about things that matter. The contract with the Koreans. Ready to sign tomorrow morning at 9:00 a.m. They want you to personally lead the design of the new headquarters in Seoul. All expenses paid. First-class travel. Of course. I smiled. Truly smiled. This time, the world was literally opening up at my feet. Meanwhile, in some damp basement in Queens, a ghost was ruminating on his defeat. Justice isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it is simply the sound of one life moving forward, unstoppable, while another quietly extinguishes in the dark. The basement in deep Queens. A 3,000 square foot illegal unit in a 1970s brick house. The exterior stained with grime. It smelled of mildew. The upstairs neighbors' fried food. And pure hopelessness. David sat on a wobbly stool in front of an outdated laptop. The screen showed an email inbox. It was the 5th rejection of the week. A luxury real estate firm was writing him back after a humiliating interview for a junior commercial architect role. We have decided to move forward with another candidate whose profile better aligns with our current needs. Another profile, he muttered, slamming the laptop shut. Behind him, Chloe was standing by the only window, a tiny slit looking out at a concrete stairwell. She was finishing stuffing her clothes into a battered rolling suitcase. The harsh final zip-zip of the zipper echoed in the barren room. Do you have to make so much noise? He grunted without turning around. It's the last time you'll have to hear it. So deal with it, she replied. Her voice was flat, worn out. There were no tears or anger left, only an infinite exhaustion. She was wearing jeans and an oversized hoodie. All of her executive girlfriend clothes had been sold on Poshmark just to pay for one more month of rent in this dump. David turned around. He finally looked at her standing there with the suitcase and something inside him. Something that wasn't even love anymore. Just the raw terror of absolute isolation shuddered. Where are you going? He asked. His voice sounding small. Ridiculous. To a friend's place in Yonkers. She says I can crash on her couch until I figure something out and then probably back to my hometown. My mom says my uncle can get me a shift at his bakery. Are you just giving up on architecture? He asked. A pathetic flare of his old arrogance rising. As if her giving up was a greater sin than his own. Chloe let out a short, bitter laugh. What architecture? David. Yours. The kind that consists of watching you get rejected for intern jobs at 40 years old. No thanks. I'd rather hand out change and sell bread. At least it's honest. This is all temporary. Chloe. He tried. Standing up and stepping toward her. Clinging to a frail hope. When the storm passes. When I find something. What storm? David. She interrupted. Looking him in the eyes for the first time with brutal clarity. There is no storm. There is a desert. And you drank all the water. There is nothing. No firm. No money. No family that can stand you. Not even your ex-wife's condo because the bank is already foreclosing on it. There is only debt. And I am not going to rot in this hole with you while you keep dreaming that Sarah is going to come back and rescue you. The name Sarah spoken aloud in that miserable room cracked like a whip. David went pale. I didn't say that. You think it. Chloe spat, gripping the handle of her suitcase. You think it every single day. You hate her. But you crave her order. Her efficiency. Her money. I loved you. David. Really? But I loved you. The successful architect. The confident man. Not this ghost who spends his days throwing resumes into the void and cursing a woman who doesn't even remember you exist. Every word was a nail. True. Unstoppable. David couldn't reply. He just stood there watching as the last person left in his world abandoned him. And us. He managed to stammer. A final pathetic lifeline. Chloe stopped in the doorway without turning around. Us. We were a mistake. A very expensive mistake for both of us. Goodbye. David. She walked out, pulling the door shut behind her. The dull click wasn't loud, but it echoed in the emptiness of the room like the slamming of vault doors. David stood paralyzed, listening to the rumble of the suitcase wheels rolling away down the hallway, growing fainter and fainter until they disappeared entirely. He slumped back down onto the stool. The silence was absolute. And inside that silence, for the very first time, there was no anger toward Sarah, nor toward his family, nor even toward Chloe. There was only a naked truth, terrifying in its simplicity. He was alone. And it was his fault. His alone. His phone. A cheap prepaid Android. Buzzed. A text from his mother. David. Your sister and I have been talking. If you need a hot meal, you know there is always a plate for you here on Sundays. But regarding financial help, you know we simply cannot. Love. Mom. Charity. A Sunday invitation to the family soup kitchen. That was all that remained of his proud clan. He read the message over and over. Then, with a slow, agonizing movement, as if every muscle fought against it, he opened the laptop browser. In the search bar, he slowly typed, "Delivery driver jobs near me. No experience." On the private rooftop terrace of my new penthouse in the West Village, the air smelled of recent rain and the wet jasmine in the planters. The launch party had ended hours ago. Below, New York City sparkled. A beautiful, indifferent tapestry of lights. I stood by the glass railing, a glass of full-bodied Cabernet in my hand, breathing in the profound, hard-won peace of someone who has successfully reclaimed her life. The door to the terrace slid open. Elena stepped out, wearing her trench coat and carrying my tailored blazer draped over her arm. "Everyone's gone. The Koreans are ecstatic. I left the contracts on your desk for you to sign in the morning. The Soul deal is obscenely lucrative. Thank you, Elena, for everything. She walked over, placing my blazer on a lounge chair. Are you happy? This is just the beginning. You know that you're going to be even bigger. I know. I nodded, taking a sip of the wine. And yes, I am happy. But not because of this, I said, gesturing with my glass toward the glittering skyline. I'm happy for the silence. For the absence of noise. His family, his drama. It's a glorious silence. Eleanor smiled. Any news from the unemployed Prince Charming? She asked with her usual biting wit. I smiled, looking out at the horizon. I had heard whispers through Victor's industry network. David trying to push his resume onto third-rate firms. Being rejected time and again. The short sale of the Columbus Avenue condo just to cover a fraction of his debts. Chloe vanished, retreated back to her hometown. They were footnotes in the history of my life. They didn't even bring me the bitter aftertaste of revenge anymore. Just the confirmation of a universal axiom. Fake foundations always sink. The past is just an old facade. Eleanor, I said, turning to her with a calm, powerful smile. I am building from the foundation up now. And this time, the architect and the owner are the exact same person. No one will ever tear it down. Eleanor raised her imaginary glass. To that. To the foundations. And to the owners. I let her show herself out. Remaining alone on the rooftop. The night breeze was brisk. In the distance, the silhouettes of skyscrapers I had helped design cut into the night sky. They were no longer symbols of a shared, betrayed dream. They were testaments to my talent. And the ones to come. The towers in Seoul. The global hotels. The projects buzzing in my mind would be something more. They would be proof that you can walk through hell, demolish everything down to the rubble, and build something infinitely more beautiful, more solid, and entirely your own upon the ashes. I raised my glass in a silent toast. Not to success. Not to revenge. To freedom. A harsh freedom. One at an incredibly high price. But one that was now as much mine as the air I was breathing. The woman who had walked out of the Odeon had just been born. And the one looking out over Manhattan from the heights was only just getting started. The future finally wasn't an unknown variable. It was a blank blueprint and I was the one holding the pen.